Hello everyone, and welcome to, Autocrat, Biopedia, and or After Alexander, wherever you're listening to this, in fact. This is a quick update across podcasts to ask you an honest question I do not know the answer to. You see, I've actually written up a first draft of a historical fiction novel. I've been working on it since about 2022, and it's currently sitting at around 59,000 words, I think, split across about 34 chapters. It's set during the transition of power between Nikephoros III and Alexios I of the Eastern Roman Empire, which is more commonly referred to as the Byzantine Empire. The working title so far is Gutter Crown, and to give you a flavour for it, here's the blurb I've come up with. Constantinople, 1081. Since the defeat of Emperor Romanos at the hands of the Seljuk Turks a decade ago, the Roman Empire has been plagued by catastrophe. Anatolia has all but fallen away. The economy is in ruins. A weak-willed old emperor watches on as civil war and intrigue bring the empire to the brink, even as the sharks are beginning to circle. Alexios Komnenos, the promising young commander of the Western armies, has carried all before him. When the endless network of schemes at court produces a plot which threatens to bring down his family, he must move against the throne itself. But, if he can grab hold of the reins of power, he must keep them. In doing so, he faces a choice that could make or break the future of the entire empire. The story itself relies heavily on the Alexiad by Anna Komnene as a primary source, with a range of other well-known primary and secondary sources. There are some plot points of my own addition, but I've hopefully allowed the history to speak for itself. At least, I like to think so. Now, there is arguably a connection to all three of the podcasts I mentioned at the start of this episode. Its connection to Autocrat speaks for itself. It is set in what is essentially the Roman Empire, itself a continuation of the Republic, and before that the Kingdom, which we're dealing with at the time of writing this segment. If you are listening on After Alexander, then the Eastern Roman Empire at the end of the 11th century is a Greek-speaking Hellenized state, arguably continuing on the legacy of Alexander the Great and the Hellenistic world, at least in a linguistic sense. We kind of spoke about this during our crossover with the history of the Outremer, I don't know how many episodes ago now. Now, I will admit that the connection to Biopedia is a bit more tenuous. We have, in episode 75 of Biopedia, spoken about the plague of Justinian, which took place in the same state about 500 or 600 years earlier. Other than that, there is really just the concept of family connections and bloodlines, which we've talked about a few times on Biopedia, and which is pervasive as a theme in the novel. So, that's all well and good, that's the context out of the way. I've written the draft of a novel. So now, we come to my question. The manuscript is finished, at least the first version of it is. So, the next logical step is getting it published, as intimidating as that sounds to me. So, I'm coming to you, hat in hand, with a mixture of a question and a proposition. I am planning to read out the prologue on air to whet the appetite a bit, and I'm not sure about the details yet, but I imagine this will be on all three podcast feeds. Once this has been done, I'm going to start the process of converting the book into an eBook format to try and release it on Kindle. What I'm asking is whether this novel is something you would be interested in reading. Please let me know at any of the following email addresses. If you're listening to this on Biopedia, I can be reached at biopediapodcast@gmail.com. For After Alexander, the email address is afteralexpod@gmail.com. Finally, the Autocrat email is autocratpodcast@gmail.com. However, you don't necessarily have to stick to whichever podcast you heard this in, it's mainly just for tidiness' sake that I'm mentioning all three. Feel free to let me know your thoughts at any of these email addresses, either when you hear this episode or after the prologue reading. I would love to hear your feedback. Well, after that shameless bit of self-promotion, that's it from me. As always, thank you for listening, and until next time, have a great week, everyone.